Hello again. Today we are going to look at group policy objects and organizational units in Windows 2008 R2 server uh, in 2008 domain. We can first of all access uh, our group policy management one of two ways. We can either hit the start button and go to administrative tools, and we can look for group policy management, or we can click on run and we type GPMC, stands for Group Policy Management Console.msc. Either way, you're going to be taken to the same place. Now, before we begin creating a group policy, we will create an organizational unit. So if we go to our server manager and we click on roles, Active Directory, domain services, Active Directory users and computers, we select our server and we right click. We can create a new organizational unit. So we're going to create two organizational units. We're going to create one for users and we will create one for our computers. Now we are going to create group policies for both our users and our computers. So we will go back to our group policy management screen and we are going to click down on our domain and we are going to right click and this new GPO is going to be called again our user and we are going to create another one for our computers. So now that we've created our group policy objects and we have created our organizational units, we are going to click in our server manager and we are going to link our group policies to the organizational units. So we click on, let's first take our computer organizational unit and we are going to link an existing GPU. And we select this KH computer GPU and click OK, and that GPU is now linked. Likewise we do with users. And there we have linked our group policy objects. Now what we need to do is to edit our group policy objects and create some settings that will be useful for our network administrator or our domain admins. So we will go now to our domain, and we are going to edit our GPU. So we right click and edit. So let's say we have a number of computers that are located in a particular office, and we know that they're going to be using one common domain. For instance, we can set that default domain. So we have logon, we double click, assign a default domain, and we will enable this policy, and the default domain in this case will be kh.com. And we apply and click OK. We are going to look at system, and we are going to, let's say, change access the system restore. And what we can do is that we can turn off system restore to any user, regardless of whether they are administrator or a normal user. So we go into that policy, double click, and we enable. Click apply, and we have that policy enabled. So that's it for the computer GPU. We close our editor. So we're going to make some changes to our user editor, to our user GPU. Again, we right click and edit. And here we're going to select our user configuration, policies. So we are going to block users from adding or removing programs, and we are going to add or remove programs. Double click and we enable. Once again, we click OK, and we note that our policy is enabled. So we can also decide that we do not want the user to be remaining logged in for too much longer if they are away or not using the computer. So what we may do is that we may do two things. We may force a specific screensaver if we wanted to, but I'm not going to configure that. We can have a screensaver timeout, which we will configure. So we will enable that, and we will say 900 seconds is going to be quite a bit too long. So let's say we give if the user has the machine idle for 30 seconds. Of course, this is probably not going to be very practical, but for demonstration purposes, I will leave it at 30 seconds. More practical setting might be, let's say, in the order of about 5 minutes. So we click apply. We close, and we also want to password protect the screensaver. and we enable. So this way, whenever the user comes back and decides that they want to use the machine again, they are forced to enter the password to log back in. So these are some of our user settings that we're going to change for or edit for our user policy. Now, we have created an organizational unit, or we have created organizational units, and we have created our group policies. But these are useless if we have nothing to apply it to. Now, you would probably recall from my earlier videos when we created computer accounts and we created users, we simply put them directly into the general computer container that is built into Active Directory, and likewise with our users were simply lumped in to the rest of our domain default domain users or default Active Directory users. So we are going to change that somewhat. So we have two users that were created before. We are going to drag those into our users. You'll see the warning. We select yes. And likewise with our computers. Let's just, for example, say we are going to take our Vista and our Windows 7 computers. We're going to leave the XP computer alone, but we're going to take these two and plug them in to our new policy. So now that we have that, now that we have our users and our computers and our policy has been enabled, what we are going to do is that we are going to force our policy to be updated across our network. So we are going to start our command prompt, and we're going to say gp update /force. And this is going to immediately apply our group policies that we just created across our network, across our domain. So we are going to go into some of our advanced system settings, and of course we're prompted for an administrator password. And we will notice that under startup and recovery, we do not have any option for system restore. So if we go back to our control panel and we do a search for system restore, and we realize that it has been turned off by group policy. So the administrator is actually, even though the administrator provided credentials, system restore has been disabled because it is a computer-based policy and not simply a user-based policy. So we are also going to look at what the user has access to, and you would probably recall that we removed programs and you'd realize that the user does not have permission to uninstall any program. This will have to be strictly by use of the administrator's credentials. So that is a user policy being enforced. And we are going to leave our desktop idle for a moment, and we are going to see what happens, because remember, we also changed the screensaver settings. You'll notice that when we look at it on resume display log on screen, that has been disabled. It is grayed out, and the reason for that is that we have set as a policy so that the user no longer has control over this area. You would notice also the wait time has been changed because of policy, so therefore this is no longer enabled. The user cannot make any changes to this. So we are going to wait for that to happen. And there we have our screensaver kicking in. And now you'll try to reactivate it, and you'll realize that again it's going to prompt for password. It's going to force the user to enter a password because of our user policy that has been enforced. So that pretty much describes our use of group policy. Just to be sure, we are going to also try this out on our Windows 7 client. So once again, we are going to right click on our computer, properties, advanced system settings, and you'll see here system protection. System restore is disabled by your system administrator. Once again, if we go and we search our control panel, and we'd realize again that our policy is being enforced so that even the administrator is unable to run system restore. If we also look at our screensaver, you'd notice again that we can set a screensaver, but we cannot change the time, we cannot change the ability to on resume to display the log on screen, because those items have been set by group policy. So if we click OK and we just give it again 30 seconds, we should see the same effect as we saw on our Vista client. And there we have our screensaver activated, and now if we try to go back in, we realize that we must enter a password in order to unlock the machine, and that again has been enforced by our user policy. So we have successfully shown group policies in action. Thank you so much for viewing. We look forward to seeing you for our next video. Thank you.